I switched microphones. How about now? Good. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Ready to live. All right. Still getting nothing? Audio's on, man. All right. All right, we're back. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. I don't know why it wasn't connecting, but I think we're live now. Right on. So if anybody joined in my live yesterday, it was on TikTok. But what the last thing I said before I tuned out was I was headed out the door to the Suns Lakers game, and I said the Suns were going to win by 6, and you can take it to the bank. So I want to apologize if you bet on the Suns winning by 6, but they did win by 4, and I think they were predicted to lose. So that was pretty awesome. So go Suns. Awesome. F-18 Hornet, you can hear my voice and I sound more relaxed compared to last time. Maybe I was more high-strung last time. I don't know. Uh, Thanks for being here, everybody. I put in the title that I was going to share something from Top Gun. This is like an insider info that I think most people don't know about how they filmed Top Gun 2. I'm a huge fan of the movie Top Gun 2, and I know lots of fighter pilots have gone on and made videos about how it's unrealistic and all that. I don't care. It is the best aerial footage ever made, in my opinion. It is super cool. They filmed like hundreds of hours to make Top Gun 2. If you go back and watch Top Gun 1 again, they filmed like 1 or 2 sorties and then kept replaying the same scene over and over. So if you compare the two movies, it's just night and day. So they did a really good job on Top Gun 2 with the aerial footage. Now the storyline, sure, it's a bit Hollywood. I get it. But who cares? It was a great movie. But the insider thing I was going to share with you today is that in the scenes where they have the 5th-gen aircraft, right? A lot of people have commented that it was a Su-57, the Felon. It actually isn't. It's modeled after that, but the artist took some liberties with it. If you look closely, some of the wing line, some of the canopy and fuselage are slightly different, but it's meant to kind of look like the Su-57. So it's not an exact replica, but it's close. But here's what's interesting about it, is they filmed all those scenes with a real airplane, a live airplane flying it. They flew it with an L-139. So as they're live flying all of these scenes, they put sensors all down the wing line and all the flying control surfaces. So later, when they came back and added on the CGI on top of it, they weren't CGIing the entire airplane. So it still was flying like a normal airplane would fly, turning and maneuvering like a real airplane would turn and maneuver. And then they just added the CGI of the shape of the airplane on top of the L-139. So that's kind of the insider info there. If you didn't know that, it's pretty neat that they flew the entire thing with multiple airplanes, the low levels, the dogfights, everything that you see was filmed with live airplanes, and then they CGI'd the Su-57 look-alike on top of it. So anyway, all right, back to your questions. Bassy, don't want to make me comfortable. All right, I appreciate that. Modeled off the T-50. All right. It's probably AI. What's that? What's probably AI? That movie? That was not AI. That was a good movie. Anyway. All right, Arthur Lopez Silva, you asked how to be an officer in the Air Force. To be an officer in the Air Force, you have to first get a college degree. So if you are not already starting that process, go do that. And then after that, you have to commission through one of the 3 commissioning sources: Air Force Academy, ROTC, or Officer Training School, OTS. So yeah, that's how you become an officer. All right. How do they do the falling leaf maneuver? Are you referring to the Kavocher Bell? I don't remember the falling leaf maneuver specifically from Top Gun 2. I'll have to go back and look at which scene you're referring to. But yeah, there's some really cool maneuvers that they do in that movie. A lot of people think that the Cobra maneuver done in the movie can only be done by Russian airplanes, because that's most of the time what you see on TikTok, but that's not true. There's dozens of airplanes around the world that can do a Cobra. The first Air Force to do it was the Swedish Air Force, so props to them. And that was back in 1960. They're the ones who really patented or created the Cobra maneuver. But many airplanes, the F-18, the F-15, F-22, they can all do the Cobra. The F-16 Vista can do the Cobra, but not the F-16 because of the flight control limiter system that we have on it. So anyway, that's the Cobra. All right, 949 Miguel, what is my opinion on Civil Air Patrol? I think it's a great way to get started in flying, get an introduction to it, and fly with some experienced people. I have a really good friend. He's still an active F-35 pilot, and he's very active in Civil Air Patrol. So I'll have him on as a guest probably in the next week or two. Um, but yeah, Civil Air Patrol is a great way to get involved. I highly recommend it. Cool. Sumesh, you said, how are you doing? I'll just put comments with the ones I'm answering. There you go. Look at that. Now you guys know who I'm answering. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for asking. Just at the end of my day, about to head home, have dinner with the family. It's great. We love jets. You're 100% correct. The Swedish invented it, which is what I said a few minutes ago. Very cool maneuver. And yeah, props to the Swedish Air Force for that. Nice. J-35 Draken, very cool. That's an awesome airplane. Can a F-22 operate a U-2? I think you mean F-22 pilot, I'm assuming. So yeah, pilots can change between airframes, and the U-2 is one of those airframes that a lot of people will go do for a while, and then maybe they'll go back to their original airframe. It does require extra training. You do have to get fitted for your spacesuit and all that cool stuff. I've never flown the U-2, but I think it's a really cool airplane. If you have not seen one take off, it's really neat because it takes off and it goes what appears to be straight vertical. It's got this humongous wing, and it's got an F-16 engine, and so that thing just shoots for the sky, which is pretty amazing. All right, how do I feel about the F-16 being 50 years old this year? I think you mean 50 years young, buddy. No, the F-16 is a legacy airplane for sure. It's being replaced by the F-35. The F-35 is incredible. It is I always say jokingly, but I mean it, it is like going from a typewriter to an iPhone 16. It's just not the same thing. You can't even compare the two. There's nothing wrong with the typewriter. The F-16 is still a great airplane, and there's still a place for it in the Air Force. It'll still be around for quite a few years, and a lot of countries will keep flying them. Some countries are getting brand new ones rolling off the line right now. The aerodynamics have not changed very much over the years, and so what you're doing is just getting a more technologically advanced version of the F-16 where the aerodynamics are the same, but now you've got a bunch of tech, a bunch of Gucci toys strapped onto the airplane, and it's really cool. I flew the Block 72 before I retired, and that's a phenomenal airplane with an ESA radar. It's very cool. Harry Ling, you want to know how much free time did I have as an Air Force pilot? Dude, it's a full-time job, man. We do tend to work slightly more hours than your average, job in the Air Force, but not always because you have to. It's because you love what you're doing, And for every flight hour that we do, we probably spend 8 or 10 hours mission planning and preparing to go fly. So it is very detail-oriented, very well planned. We don't just hop in and go do whatever. We spend a lot of time preparing for every single mission. So I would usually work about a 10-hour day on average. There were times where I would work 12-hour days, usually about a 10-hour day, 5 days a week, and then weekends were to yourself. So, like I said, man, it's a full-time job. I still have plenty of time for my family and for other activities and stuff like that. Let's see. Brody, you want to know if I enlisted after high school or college, and what's an easier path to becoming a pilot? So I did not enlist after high school. Right after high school, I went to college and went through the ROTC program. At the end of the ROTC program, I commissioned as an officer and went to pilot training. I would say that is a more direct path to becoming a pilot, although you can enlist first, serve for a few years, then either go back to college, go to the Air Force Academy, or get your degree while you're enlisted, and then apply for OTS. That is a more roundabout way to do it. I don't know that one is easier. I think that when it comes to, if being a pilot is your desire, then you should start now in preparing for ROTC or the Academy, applying for those if you haven't already. And if you don't make it through that route, then there's still the route of OTS. And so, anyway, that's, yeah. All right. What is the best experience you've had in a fighter jet? Man, I've had some really, really cool experiences flying a fighter jet. I love low-level flying through the canyons like you see in Top Gun. Even that, although it's like a great movie and the cinematography is awesome, it still doesn't really do it justice to the feeling you get when you're flying 600 miles an hour through a canyon. The canyon is above you on both sides. You're down inside this canyon pulling G's around every turn. There's some really cool low-level routes here in Arizona. in California, in Alaska. I've flown them, kind of all over, and that is one of the most fun things that you can do, I think, is low-level flying. It's really great. 949 Miguel, you wanted to know, why did I go to ROTC instead of USAFA? USAFA is the U.S. Air Force Academy, for those who don't know, and ROTC is Reserve Officer Training Corps. So, to each his own is what I'll say to start. I have nothing but love for everyone who went to the academy. It's a great school. When I was finishing high school, I wanted to be a pilot, and so I applied to both the Air Force Academy and ROTC. And in that process, you have to get a congressional nomination. It sounds intimidating, but if you start early, find out what the process is for your local congressperson. They give out more letters than there are slots available in the service academies, and all service academies require it. But having that letter of recommendation from your congressman can really help you. I believe that really helped me get a 4-year ROTC scholarship. Then once I had my two options of academy or ROTC, then I got to make the decision, what do I want the next 4 years to look like? For me personally, I wanted to go to college and have the full college experience, graduate a second lieutenant. You can go to the academy and have the academy experience and graduate a second lieutenant. There's nothing wrong with either one. They're both a valid track. For me personally, I thought ROTC sounded more up my alley, and I enjoyed it. It was awesome, and I highly recommend it. Next Gen Gaming, Airman First Class. If that's you and your rank, thanks for serving, man. That's awesome. Good luck with the rest of your career. Bassie, I don't know who you're replying to there. I did join back in 04. I know that's like the Stone Age, man. But I don't know what you're replying to right there. All right. Anyway, Sidewinder low-level route. Yeah, there's a bunch of low-level routes. You can actually look them up. They're all they're published, the low-level routes, because they're part of the FAA airspace system, and so you can actually see where they are. And there's some really cool low-level routes. And if you read in the comments of your FAA handbook, you can probably find it all online now. And I use ForeFlight on my iPad for most of my flying nowadays. But you can look at all the restrictions, rules, all the requirements for every low level. And what's neat is you can look at the minimum altitude for each route and each segment of every low level. And so you can find the low levels that are approved down to 100 feet or down to surface or down to 300 feet or whatever. And then you can kind of see where people flying down at 100 feet, 300 feet, because that's when they really are, ripping through there. Now, we have to avoid all populated areas and people and all that, so if we're coming up on a major highway or houses or something like that, we always climb or we go around. So we would never intentionally blitz over somebody's house at 300 feet. That would not be in accordance with procedure, so it would never be done intentionally. If it ever happened, it was an accident. Cool. Next Gen Gaming, your school has junior ROTC that starts in 8th grade. That's cool, man. I have a lot of friends who did JROTC. The question was asked the other day if you have an automatic spot in ROTC if you do JROTC. The answer is no, you don't have an automatic spot, but it's another extracurricular activity that might help you when it's time to be selected for ROTC. All right. Should you study for another bachelor's degree in the USA or use your foreign bachelor's degree to apply for a pilot slot, Delta KC? I would say talk to your recruiter specific to ROTC or the Academy recruiter or an OTS recruiter, and they should have the specific requirements on whether or not your degree is acknowledged. If you went to an accredited university, it is likely a good, they're all good. It is likely a valid and accepted degree. So I probably wouldn't go through the effort of getting another one unless you really want to go through the ROTC program. But if you already have a degree and it's an acknowledged degree, what I would recommend you do is apply for all of them. Apply for OTS, apply for ROTC, apply for the Academy, and just to up your chances of a chance to go and fly. And then you can also look into Air National Guard. So I see Air National Guard comments in there. A lot of people talking about it. The Air National Guard is specific to each state. It is really controlled and run by the state, and the governor of the state is who they report to. but their flight training is the exact same as the U.S. Air Force, and we call it total force integration. We fly together all the time, and I had a number of Air National Guard students in my pilot training class when I went through. So if that's something that interests you as well, look at your local Air National Guard, whatever your state has, and you can go and apply right there and talk to them about when they're hiring next, what they're looking for, all that stuff. When you're skiing in Snowshoe, West Virginia, there's two F-15s that pass right over the top of the mountain, inverted every time. That's awesome. I love to see that. We do it. There are special rules about ski resorts because you don't want to cause an avalanche. So I'm sure that those guys or girls are abiding by the rules, but you do have to give ski resorts a slightly wider berth when they're coming over the top. So I would suspect they're probably like 1,500 feet or more above the surface because, yeah, you don't want to cause a avalanche there on the ski mountain. Trust me. All right. I don't, Jenny, I don't know how you say that handle, but anyway, is it better to be a fighter pilot through pilot school or the Air Force? So if you want to be a fighter pilot, you have to go through the Air Force's flight training, whether you show up with experience or not. I joined the Air Force, went through ROTC in college. I graduated and I went on to pilot training, and I had zero flight experience, none whatsoever, not 1 minute of flying an airplane. And I went right into pilot training. There was another student in my class with 1,200 hours flying business jets. So he had to go through the exact same training I did. And right in the beginning, it felt like he had an advantage with instrument training and stuff like that. He ended up washing out of the class. He had too much to unlearn and relearn, and he didn't finish. So they have a program that will take you from zero flight training all the way through to be a fighter pilot. Now, if you just want to be a pilot and just want to fly, which is awesome, you can go fly on your own. You can get your private pilot's license. You can go fly business, whatever. But if you then apply later to be a pilot in the Air Force, you're still going to have to go through the entire pilot training program. So, all right. Strike, yes, I've heard of the flight sim DCS. A bunch of people sent me videos of DCS. One of the videos I recently reviewed, it was like an hour long. So I was trying to find a good clip to pull from it and talk about it. I made some videos talking about it, but yeah, it was. It looks incredible. Is the short takeaway? It looks extremely accurate. They send me clips of like ground ops, engine starting procedures, all the different stuff that they're doing in their simulator there on DCS, and it looks pretty accurate. I have never played. I've never tried it. I'm down to if somebody has a place I can try it out or set it up or whatever. I think that'd be fun to try it out. But yeah, I did make a couple videos recently. I just got to get them edited and I'll get them out to talk about what I saw in DCS. But it was pretty accurate and very cool. We love jets. They come barreling down the mountain parallel to the ski lifts. So yeah, there are like I said, very specific requirements on distances, and typically within our flight system, we have lines. Either it's a red circle or lines around areas that we're not allowed to fly or where we have to keep a minimum altitude. So I would guess they're just outside of those lines, which, when a fighter jet's coming by at 500 miles an hour, it might not seem that far away, but they're probably 1 mile laterally or 1,500 feet vertically. I'm sure that's probably in there, but it'll still go by super fast. I mean, a mile away in a fighter jet is like nothing, right? So, Kamal, you bet, man. I'm not getting to all the questions. I am trying to get to a lot of the questions, but they're scrolling by pretty quick. So, anyway. All right. In the future, if I were to fly in the Navy, what plane would I pick? Early 2030s. I would pick the F-35. That thing is going to be around. The F-16, we said earlier, it's turned 50 years old this year. And the F-35 is going to be the next plane that is really the backbone of the force. It is now being flown by the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Marine Corps. It's being flown by something like 15 other countries. I couldn't list them all, but I've flown with quite a few of them. And it's a phenomenal airplane. We've gone from a typewriter to an iPhone. And so I would definitely fly the F-35 if I were just getting started, Or if you're just finishing up high school and you're about to go to college and you're thinking, hey, I'm going to try to be a pilot and it's going to be 2030 by the time I get there, yeah, I would also still try to fly the F-35. Lenny, have I ever worked with the Luftwaffe? You bet I have, man. Plenty of times. There were 4 or 6 German Air Force pilots in my pilot training class. I have flown with them in many exercises all over the world, and yeah, they're phenomenal. They're very disciplined and a really great Air Force. So, yeah. If I had to fly something beside the Viper, what would I fly? I made a video talking about if I could pick one other jet, that I would pick the SR-71. The Blackbird has always been one of my favorite airplanes. But I clarified later that I would want to fly it like once. Like I want to go set the record for fastest and highest and all that stuff. I think it'd be super cool. But I don't necessarily want to fly it for a whole career. I still loved flying the F-16. And what I loved about it was that it was multi-role. So I got to do a little bit of everything, from SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses, to offensive counter-air, OCA, defensive counter-air, DCA. All the missions that we do, I got to do it in the F-16. I also got to be single seat, and I really liked being in charge of my own airplane and not having to confer with anybody if I was doing anything. So that was my own personal preference. I wanted multi-role and I wanted single seat. At the time that I went through pilot training, the F-16 was the only option that met both of that criteria. Now the F-35 is also single seat and multi-role. There is a little bit of multi-role going on with F-22 and F-15EX and stuff, but even the EX looks like it'll be a 2-seater. So anyway, DJ edits. It's a really important question, but I think you know the answer. It's dogs. I have one dog. He is a part German Shepherd, part Chocolate Lab. He's awesome. His name is Taylor. My children named him after Taylor Swift, of course. He loves the name. All right. We love jets. Am I familiar with the F-16 XL? I am not. I have not flown the F-16 XL. I have flown 6 different blocks of the F-16 during my time, but not that one. All right, Liam, what do I think of the RAAF? They drink a lot. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously. No, they're cool. I've flown with a number of exercises with the RAAF, and I've also flown with them at Luke Air Force Base. They used to have a permanent training detachment there, flying F-35s. They since brought their training back home, and they do F-35 training back in Australia. I went to White Australia for a few weeks years ago. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. One of my favorite places to visit. I spent lots of time in Melbourne, driving the Great Ocean Road, having fish and chips. It was a really great time. So yeah, I got a lot of respect for the RAAF. All right. Overlander, for ROTC cadets, math, and more math. What I will add to this is that we do use math. We use a lot of math. But you don't have to be the next Alan Turing. You don't have to be a math genius, right? The math that we're using, most of it is basic math. We just try to do it quickly. So practicing will make you better, right? With almost everything. If you currently struggle with math, you get to practice, right? You can get better at math. You don't necessarily need to go do differential equations and calculus 4 and all the other classes that are required for a math degree. But it is good to be proficient at math. Now, you can have a degree in anything. You just need a 4-year college degree, a bachelor's degree, in order to fly. And I have friends who've had a degree in all different fields, right? But the Air Force does like people to have a STEM degree or a technical degree. They do value that a little bit, so I believe it's weighted a little more heavily when you're applying. But a 4.0 in history or communications might be better than a 2.0 in engineering. I don't know. I had a 3.1 in engineering, and it worked for me. So, Pity Hartman, yes. I'm trying to get to all the questions, so drop them in. When will my recruiter come to my school? I don't know. So the Air Force, the entire military has a bunch of different recruiters. It has recruitment centers, and I've never worked as a recruiter or in a recruitment center. I am not funded by the Air Force. They don't pay me to recruit. I just like talking about flying, and so I started talking about it, and then people started asking me questions. But I will tell you that when I went through the process, The recruiter that I spoke to was specific to the Air Force Academy and ROTC, which is different than the recruiter who is recruiting people to join out of high school and enlist. So if you're wanting to join out of high school and enlist in the Air Force, you can talk to your local recruiter, whoever that is. There's a recruitment center almost every city. But if you want to go to Air Force Academy or ROTC, I advise you not to wait for them to come to you. Go look up who the recruiter is for your, I don't know if it's by region or by area. Find out who it is and then talk to them, because the path towards the academy and ROTC is slightly different than the path towards enlisted. For instance, I never took the ASVAB. A lot of people have asked me how I scored on the ASVAB. I don't know. I didn't take it. I took the AFOQT, Air Force Officer Qualifying Test, and that gave me a score, which then went on to my pilot application. So it is a slightly different process. I wouldn't wait for them to come to you. Go to them. All right. Let's see. Strike again, was the F-16 my first choice? It was. I was very fortunate out of pilot training to get my first choice. Not everybody got their first choice, but I did, and I was incredibly excited that night when the drop came down. My second choice on that list had been the F-15E, because again, I wanted to do multi-role. That was my top priority. I spent a lot of time going back and forth on what jet I wanted to fly. We had a list of all the jets that were available coming out of pilot training, and all the ones that were going to be in our drop, 14 students, 14 airplanes. What do I want to fly? And what I determined for myself was that my number one priority was multi-role, because I found that to be really interesting. I wanted the challenge of doing a little bit of everything. And then my second priority, I wanted to be single seat. So I preferred the F-15E multi-role over the F-15C, which is air-to-air but single seat. But my number one choice was the F-16, and like I said, I was very fortunate, very excited to get that. All right. Hi, Sinan. What is my favorite moment flying the F-16? There's quite a few of them. I mentioned the other night, flying along on a pitch black night with no moon on night vision goggles, watching a meteor shower above me as I'm just cruising above the desert in like the 30s. And it was awesome. It was beautiful and just so surreal. But I've had a lot of moments like that flying the F-16, and so it's hard to pick just one. I love ripping through low levels, through canyons. There's a section of the Grand Canyon where you can still do a low level. Most of it you can no longer fly through. It's a protected area, but there's still one section that you can go through, and it's so beautiful. And so I love doing that as well. So it's hard to pick just one. I've had a lot of amazing experiences flying jets. It's also really fun flying against other airplanes and other countries and other experiences that you just haven't had before. But getting to go fly in an exercise with, I don't know, the RAF or the German Air Force or the Australian Air Force, and getting to go and match up against them 1v1 or even in a big exercise has always been really, really exciting. Danny Z, do I really like my mustache? I'm not sure why you would ask that question. But yeah, I'm good with my mustache. I like it. I don't know what else to say. All right. If I could pick any era of aviation to fly in, what time frame would you be, and what airplane would you fly? I think we are in just an amazing, really sweet spot of aviation, and that is, I think, in another generation or two, we may not have pilots anymore, or at least not need pilots anymore. Right? With AI, with automation, there is a good chance that future fighter jets and future jets and airplanes in general are created without pilots. And so I think that right now we are in one of the last eras of manned aviation. Now I think it will always be a hobby. It'll always be something that people do because it's fun. But I would pick right now. I mean, this is a phenomenal time to be a pilot and get to fly these machines that are so advanced. Where the P-51 is my favorite World War II airplane. That's super cool. But if you're a hobbyist, you can go back and get a P-51 and fly it right now. So yeah, there's right now. C, crew chiefs, make it happen. You bet, buddy. Totally agree. Never said otherwise. Crew chiefs are awesome. Tons of respect for them. I've made a few videos thanking all the maintainers, all the support staff, everybody. It's not lost on me the amount of people who put in effort over the years so I could do what I got to do. And I have a ton of gratitude to everyone who made that happen on my behalf. And I know I was flying on behalf of the United States, but still, it loved my job, and I knew that I didn't do it alone. So just to all of you, if you're maintainer, support staff, anyone who's out there, if you're watching right now, just know that it doesn't go unnoticed. You guys are awesome, and I have a ton of gratitude for everything you did to keep me not only flying, but safe and alive and returning home after every single mission. So thank you. Jermaine Griffin, have you ever wanted to be a demo pilot? Hey, buddy, I was on the PACAF demo team, believe it or not, like 100 years ago, though. Now, I think it was like 07, 08 time frame. I was on the PACAF F-16 demo team. Loved it because I love going to air shows. It's like job appreciation day, and I would go and get to, like, sign babies and shake hands and all that good stuff. So it was an amazing time. Loved going to air shows, and I loved being part of it. Now, I never did apply for the Thunderbirds. Around the time when I would have, the phase of my career, I had started having kids, and I just didn't want to be on the road as much as they're on the road. It is difficult to live that lifestyle where they're gone a lot. So respect to the Thunderbirds. I have some good friends on the T-Birds, but I never wanted to do the Thunderbirds, or at least when I wanted to, it was early in my career. By the time I was ready to apply, I was past that point, and it was time to settle down a little bit, if you know what I mean, be a family man. Cool. Bassie, what's the highest G I've ever pulled? So I've responded to comments before. I pulled 9.3 G, which is not something I'm bragging about because it was an over G. The F-16 is rated to 9 Gs. It's got a flight control limiter that should keep you safe and keep you at 9 Gs. It is possible to overshoot the limiter, which is what I did. Was an over G, and then I got to spend the afternoon pulling panels and bringing cases of beer to the maintenance folks who helped me out with that. So, I never checked the negative G, like what is the least amount of G I've pulled, but I can tell you around -1 G is when I'm like, no thanks. It's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good, and you're hanging in the straps, and it's just, it's not fun. So I probably momentarily pulled, like -2 or -3 before, just during a maneuver or something. But I've never really checked because our G meter, it latches at the highest G you pulled. It doesn't actually latch in the negative. The old school, like, round gauge dial, those go both positive and negative, and ours are all digital. And they go positive and negative, and the computer will store it, but it doesn't show it to the pilot. So it only shows us our highest G pulled. So I've never really paid attention to the most negative G. But it hasn't been that much. It's not like I pulled -5 or anything like that. -1 is already uncomfortable, so... Viper Images, what's up, dude? No, I never got to fly in a P-51, but there's still time. It's it's never too late. Micah, what's your favorite non-American military airplane? Typhoon, the Eurofighter Typhoon. It's a really cool airplane, and that would be my favorite, I think, of any other country's airplane. That's next in line. Ingo, what is up? Guten Tag. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Let's see. What math? So you need basic math, but you got to be good at it. You got to be able to do it quickly. I studied engineering, and in engineering you have to do a lot more math in college. So I had to do all the way through calculus 4 and differential equations, the classes I mentioned earlier. So I couldn't go back. I couldn't do those right now. Like, I don't remember. But math was something that I worked on. I practiced. I got pretty good at. I've always been kind of inclined that way. You definitely need it. We spend a lot of time just calculating and recalculating fuel and range and timings and all that stuff, but you don't need to be a math whiz for that. You just need to practice your basic math and be able to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, fractions, like those sorts of things that you learn in grade school. If you can do those, practice them, get faster and better at them, you'll be fine on the math. Tamana, what majors have a better chance to get selected as a fighter pilot? So right out of pilot selection, you just get selected to go to pilot training. You don't necessarily know you're going to a fighter or not. And then how well you perform at pilot training determines if you get to go down the fighter bomber track. The Air Force prefers technical degrees. And if later in life you want to go to test pilot school because that sounds interesting, or if you want to be an astronaut, you got to walk it backwards and go, all right, to be an astronaut, you have to go to test pilot school. Go to test pilot school, you have to have an engineering degree. So if that's something you want to do later in life, go ahead and back it up to now and say, I better go get an engineering degree if that's something that interests you. But you can have any degree and still get selected to be a pilot. Danny, what's up from India? I have spent some time in India, Agra, Jaipur. And Delhi, beautiful. Love the food. My favorite food. Um, Other stuff missing on a scale of 1 to freedom. How fun is the F-16? All the way. It is all the way on that scale. Loved it. It's a blast to fly. I loved how the bubble canopy gives you 360-degree view all around you. You can roll upside down at any moment. You can see the whole world, and that's super cool. Um, we love jets. As an Air Force pilot, would I agree that the Blue Angels are better? I would not agree with that. But I have a lot of respect for the Blue Angels. I think they're a really great demonstration team. The United States Navy is the second largest Air Force in the world, behind the U.S. Air Force. And I mean, they're definitely the second best. So that's good for them. But no, I got a ton of respect for the Blue Angels. Nothing bad to say about them. They're awesome. Let's see. Vish, what are some important requirements to become a fighter pilot? So there are some requirements that are just a little bit out of everyone's control. Like if you're not born with the appropriate eyesight or something like that, right? And for that, it's it's tough. I'm sorry, but if you meet all the medical requirements, then it comes down to how well you perform in school, right? And the medical requirements, there's a whole list of them: height, weight, eyes, heart, like all the things they're going to check out before you get to pilot training. And so I would say that's the first level of like bar to entry. Some of that's within your control. You can have a strong heart and be in good shape. That's a decision you get to make if you want to spend your time working out and being healthy and eating healthy food and all of that stuff. It's within your control. So that part of it is totally up to you. If you're born with a certain eyesight that doesn't meet the requirements, now it's not as strict as it used to be. You used to have a 20/20 vision. Now you don't. You can have, I think, 20/70, and you can get LASIK and correct it to 20/20, and that's okay. But yeah, that's there's a lot of different requirements. All right, let's see. Is flight school expensive? Let me pop that one up. It can be. It depends on what you're going for. If you want to go all the way through to a commercial pilot or not. I didn't pay for flight school, the Air Force did. So if you want to be a pilot in the Air Force, you don't have to pay for your flight training. They gave me a scholarship to study engineering, so I didn't have to pay for college, which was really good for me because I was one of 7 kids. My dad was a carpenter. My mom didn't work. If I wanted to go to college, I had to find my own way because we were poor. There's no better way to say that. But once I got a scholarship to go to college, then everything was the ball was in my court the rest of the time to do well and get a pilot slot. And once I got a pilot slot, to do well so I could go down the fighter bomber track. So it didn't actually cost me money to go there, which was nice. But if you want to pay out of pocket, it can get pretty expensive flying an airplane. All right. Do I miss flying the Viper yet? I think I'll always miss it a little bit, but I had my fun, man. I flew the Viper for 20 years. I did everything you could do in the Viper, at least legally. And yeah, I don't know. I'm good. So, all right. Do you think you'll still be able to fly by 2035? Do you mean the Hornet, or do you mean you as a person? I don't know. But yeah, I think the Hornet will keep flying for quite a while. And you as a person, depends on your age, but yeah, you can probably fly through 2035 as well, I would guess. Let's see. Aviola flies. Did the Air Force ever make me go on a flight break? So there are times in your Air Force career where you get sent on like a staff assignment or a joint assignment or those sorts of things. And I did do staff assignment and stuff like that. So I didn't fly every single day that I was in the Air Force. I did take an assignment or two that was not in the jet. That's fairly typical. Some people will fly their whole career. Some people will fly, most of it. It really depends on, what you want to do next. You have a lot of say in it at that point. But yeah, I did go on a flight break. I did take a couple of years out of the jet. Lenny, do you think about making a book with all the Q&A about jets? You know what, man? That's a really good idea. And you guys ask great questions, so I should include you in the book. I've thought about it, honestly, but I didn't know if anybody would buy it. So I thought, I should write a book about just how I got here and the experience and, what the behind the scenes for becoming a pilot. Maybe I will. But yeah, that's a good question. Michael, what's the age limit to learn how to fly? Dude, if you just want to fly, get a private pilot's license, you can go right up until age 65, and there's there's no limit to when you can learn. You can learn at age 64 if you want to. For the Air Force, you have to be selected for pilot training by age 33. Now, you could still go fly on your own, in the civilian world or privately up until age 65. But yeah, for the Air Force, it's 33. RJ, does the Air Force check your high school results? They do when you're applying to ROTC or the Academy. Once you've gone to one of those programs, they only care what you did recently. So when it was time to apply to pilot training, they looked at my college transcripts and my resume. They didn't look at my high school. So do what you need to in high school to get into ROTC or get into the Academy. Once you're there, do what you need to do there to be at the top of your class and go to pilot training. And once you get to pilot training, they don't look at your college GPA anymore. They only care how well you fly the airplane. Go fly the airplane well and work hard. All right, you got it. Lax Goat, you said you're 12 and you want to go to the Academy. I did not go through the Academy. I went through ROTC. The application process is very similar. I applied to both. I got into both, and I chose ROTC over the Academy as a personal choice. I think the Academy is a great way to go. Get good grades in high school when you get there, and then check out your local congressperson. Find out what the process is for getting a letter of recommendation, because that is a long lead time. You might need to apply like a year out just for that, just to be able to then apply to the Academy in probably your junior year or whenever that application takes place. I forget. But yeah, so start early just so you know the process, and write your goals out on paper. It's always good to write down your goals. You're so much more likely to stick with them if you write them down. All right. If you are European, can you join the U.S. Air Force to start your career in flight school here? So you need to be a U.S. citizen in order to be an officer and a pilot. If you have a green card, you can join the military while waiting for your citizenship. And once you become a citizen, then you could apply to commission as an officer. But if you're European and you do not have U.S. citizenship, you cannot be an officer and a pilot in the U.S. Air Force. We do have exchange tours with a number of European and allied countries where we bring a pilot over from their country and we send a pilot to theirs. And we do an exchange tour, usually a 3-year tour. I got to do an exchange tour with the RAF, which was pretty cool. And, an RAF officer got to come to America and do an exchange tour here while I was doing that. So we have a lot of those with all different countries around the world. So whatever country you're at, it just depends. But it's an opportunity all over the world for that. So hopefully it works out for you. Palace Front and Palace Chase from Kuyo. So Palace Front and Palace Chase are two programs where you can finish out your career in the reserves or the Guard, the Air National Guard. And when you apply to those programs, it's usually, it depends on where you're at in your career. Most people apply around the 10 to 12 year point. And if you apply through those programs, you basically get to keep flying. You're just no longer on active duty. And the benefit of doing that for a lot of people is you can go to the airlines and fly part-time and fly for the Guard part-time. Or you get to settle down in one location and raise your kids and you don't want to move around anymore. There's a lot of benefits that are usually personal benefits to doing that. And that's the Palace Front and the Palace Chase programs that are available. I'm making a video on that. I don't know if you're the one who asked last time or asked in one of the comments if I would make a video, but I am making a video about that I'll post even more detail. But that's kind of the big picture overview. Most people do it around a 10 to 12 year point. And the reason is, when you join the Air Force and you go to pilot training, you sign a 10-year commitment in order to do pilot training. They're going to invest a lot of money creating the pilot that you will become. And so they want to make sure that you're going to be around for a little while. And so you sign a 10-year commitment. At the end of that commitment is usually when people make the decision to Palace Chase or Palace Front. Technically, you can do it at other times. But right at that point, when your commitment is up, they also offer you a bonus to stay in. And so a lot of people will make the decision at that point to either take the bonus and stay in, or Palace Front, Palace Chase, and go to the reserves or the Guard. So. The cat's in the cradle. Can I go from enlisted to officer? Yes, there are programs to transition from enlisted to officer. The Air Force Academy program is called LEAD. I forget what it stands for, but it is for airmen to apply to the Air Force Academy, go through there, and commission as an officer. You can also apply to OTS. I don't know the selection rates. I've heard it's competitive. But once you have a college degree, if you're enlisted and you want to apply to be an officer, you can apply to OTS. I actually have 2 or 3 friends who've done it. So I know a lot of people who've done it, and it is possible. All right. I've got about 4 questions left, and then I have to go. Bassi, you keep asking me about that. Sorry, dude, I'm not going to answer that. So, what happens if a pilot crashes a plane? Bruno Jose. I made a video about this like a week or so ago, and it does happen from time to time. There can be an incident or a mishap with an airplane. There's a very thorough investigation. In fact, there's 2 investigations. There's a safety investigation and there's an accident investigation. And they're conducted completely separate from each other. And what they want to do in the safety investigation, they really want to, as quickly as possible, find out what happened so it doesn't get repeated anywhere. And we have a really robust and really effective safety program where we're able to prevent future mishaps, right? So that's on the one hand. The accident investigation, their goal is to figure out exactly what happened and basically if anyone is liable or responsible or negligent. Every incident that I was observed, I didn't have any airplane crashes, but anything I observed or whatever, the pilot was never found negligent. Now, there are times where you might have human error, but making a mistake is very different than committing a crime. And knowing the difference, it's like if someone gets in a motor vehicle and drives while drunk, that is a crime. If somebody gets in a fender bender on their drive home because someone else pulled out in front of them and didn't time it right, that can just be human error. Like, it happens. And so when it comes to flying airplanes, it's kind of the same thought. Is they investigate everything and everybody involved. They make you pee in a cup, they take your blood, they make you fill out all kinds of forms, and then they go through and find out, like, what happened that led up to this. Were there any contributing factors from your life? I never saw any pilot who was found negligent. I've heard of it happening, but I've never seen anybody be found. Now, if you are found negligent, you'll be held liable just like you would anywhere else. As far as you could lose rank, lose pay, you can end up in jail if you're truly found negligent. But it's the same for driving a motor vehicle. If you drive drunk and you get in an accident and cause something terrible, you'll still go to jail. All that is the same. So yeah, that's kind of the process there. Cool. Let's see. I didn't mean to skip anybody's questions. I have questions coming in from both YouTube and Instagram, so I'm grabbing them as they pop up. And while I'm talking, other ones go by. So if I skipped your question, it was probably an accident, unless you were a troll. The trolls are out. You guys all see them. And so, yeah, I didn't mean to skip anybody's question if it was a legit question. And I'm scrolling back. Salzin, you asked, what's the coolest plane I ever flew? Cool, man. That's a great question. The F-16 is the coolest plane. Period. Love it. It's amazing. I have so many friends who fly other airplanes who either used to fly the F-16 or wish they flew the F-16, but getting to be single seat, multi-role, do a little bit of everything, and that plane is phenomenal. It was built to be a dogfighting machine. That thing is so maneuverable, so quick. It's inherently unstable. So the platform itself is just unstable, and it uses a digital flight control to maintain stability. But by being unstable, it makes it highly maneuverable. So you can snap roll, you can move so quickly, and then you can lay into the G really fast. You can get to 9G like that. So you always have to be ready for putting G on the airplane. All right, last one, and I got to bounce, but it was awesome seeing everybody tonight. I'll go with Ariel Zanatti. What's the best tip I have for an 18-year-old who wants to be a pilot and enlist in 2 years? So my best tip is if you enlist, and if you're talking about the U.S. Air Force, if you enlist, there's a lot of jobs, a lot of really cool jobs that you can do as enlisted, but you cannot be a pilot. So if you want to be a pilot, you need to go through one of the officer training programs. So Air Force Academy, ROTC, or Officer Training School, OTS. You go through one of those, you commission as an officer, then you can go to pilot training. If you want to do that, you need a college degree. My best advice to you is look at what you might want to study in college. If you're into technical stuff like STEM or engineering, look at that. The Air Force values that. And then work hard while you're there. Everything that you do should contribute towards your end state, whatever your future goal is. Write your goals down. Break them down into digestible pieces. Start with your 10-year goal. Say, hey, in 10 years, I want to be living overseas, flying fighter jets. This is my dream, right? Write it down and then work all the way back to what you can do today to get started towards that goal. And if you successfully break that down into one step that you can take tomorrow morning when you wake up, then every single day you wake up and you take the next step towards that goal, then you'll get there. You will reach your goal. It's impossible not to reach your goal if every day is a success. And when you break it down to daily steps, every day is either success or a failure. So I hope you go out there and have a successful day tomorrow morning. It's awesome seeing everybody. Sorry I didn't get to all the questions. I got to a lot of them. I'll be back live tomorrow. So if you have questions, hit me up tomorrow, and I'll talk to you soon. Later.